In July 2018, Paul Miller, 51, and his wife Stephanie, from Ontario in Canada, were on vacation in California and Nevada and were planning to head to Las Vegas to celebrate their 26th wedding anniversary. A typical vacation for them was camping in the backwoods, hiking and kayaking, and they had hiked across Canada, North America, and Mexico. Both Paul and Stephanie were avid hikers and were in great shape and loved exploring the outdoors. On July 13, 2018, Paul decided he wanted to take one more short hike and headed for the 49 Palms Oasis Trail in Joshua Tree National Park. He promised Stephanie he would be back later that morning. He was never seen again. At the end of 2019, Paul's remains were discovered in Joshua Tree, in an area well off trail, following analysis of drone footage. What happened to Paul Miller on his solo hike? Paul Miller had a degree in environmental sciences and was working for a small company making water filtration systems to bring water to different communities. He was described as being fun to be around, with lots of friends, outgoing but caring and compassionate by friends. The Millers' kids had left home and were just about to move into the empty nest stage. Stephanie described their relationship as being best friends, and they were looking forward to the next stage of their lives. They were a solid couple and loved spending time together. Friends described Stephanie and Paul as having a great marriage, and they had just finished renovating a house they had bought 4 years before. Stephanie had a permanent teaching job confirmed in September of 2018, and Paul had a raise at work. With the children leaving home and their work news, this was an ideal trip to have their first vacation, just as a couple, to celebrate their 26th wedding anniversary. Paul was always on the go and certainly not a couch potato, and loved getting out in nature, especially with his camera. He was in great shape and never had any medical conditions, with no family history of health problems. The trip to 29 Palms and hike to Joshua Tree National Park. The Millers were getting ready to leave their hotel room in Motel 6 in 29 Palms on July 13, 2018, but Paul wanted to take one more short hike in the hope of taking some pictures of some bighorn sheep. July 13th was the last day of their trip. He left the hotel alone and at 9 a.m. drove to the 49 Palms Oasis Trail in Joshua Tree National Park. Paul promised Stephanie he'd be back later that morning. Stephanie was going to accompany her husband on the morning hike, but with time constraints pressuring them on the morning of their last day, she decided to stay at the hotel and pack up their belongings. Checkout at the hotel was 11 a.m., actually 12 noon. They had gone to have a leisurely breakfast at Denny's that morning. Stephanie was also a slower hiker than Paul, and they had both hiked to Joshua on July 12th, and so reluctantly, he decided to go on the solo hike. The motel was very close to the trail, and Paul was sure he could do the hike and return within a couple of hours, as they had to be in Vegas to catch the flight back to Ontario. Paul was wearing dark shorts, dark gray, almost black high-tech altitude VIWP hiking boots, a black hat, and carrying sunglasses, a Camelback hydration pack, and a Nikon D5300 camera. Another visitor from England at the park reported seeing Paul at around 9 a.m., walking quickly and with purpose. About halfway down the trail, he was resting by a rock that offered some shade. The witness reported seeing one other vehicle with 2 women and 2 men in their 20s who went in after Paul down the trail, but authorities have been unable to locate it. There was no camera at the parking lot at the park at the time of the disappearance. Despite a large number of canine teams, the dogs weren't able to pick up a scent. In high temperatures in the park at that time of the year, it can be hard to detect scent. One of the dogs even had the pads of its feet burnt because of the high heat. Infrared FLIR detection using helicopters was also not possible, as the rocks were warmer than the human body. The search was scaled back after 3 days of intensive search on July 18th. The probability of Paul's survival in the extreme heat was low, and park authorities decided to scale back the official search. Park Superintendent Smith said, as of the mid-August 2018, there were no new clues as to what happened to Paul Miller, stating, quote, "I assure them the Park Service will not forget about Paul Miller. We are doing all that we can. The FBI is called in only if there is a murder or homicide, and at this point, there is no indication that is the case. Nothing to indicate this was a planned disappearance," end quote. Stephanie said, quote, "Maybe he finished the trail and came out and something happened. We really don't know. But if they can't find him in the park, then what's to say he's not out of the park?" End quote. In late December 2019, the NPS and San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department reported they were investigating the discovery of human remains found in the remote and rocky portion of Joshua Tree National Park. Park authorities were alerted about the possible evidence of human remains after another agency was analyzing photographs of the area taken by drone in November. Park rangers hiked to the 49 Palms Oasis area and found the remains and personal belongings away from any trails. No indication was found with the remains, which appeared to have been in the area for some time. They reported no initial signs of foul play that were found. Remains confirmed as Paul Miller. In mid-January 2020, official identification of the remains found at the end of 2019 was made and confirmed to be that of Paul Miller. What happened to Paul Miller? Another puzzling mystery and sad U.S. National Park solo hike death, showing the dangers of hiking alone, even on apparently safe and well-marked trails. Paul was an avid outdoorsman and experienced hiker. It was hot out there in Joshua in July 2018, but he was with plenty of water on a well-established trail, hiking in the cooler part of the day. He appeared to be well prepared, but in a rush to get back to Stephanie and to leave the area as it was the end of their vacation. Paul's remains and personal belongings were found away from any trails, so it appears he got lost and disoriented in the heat and was succumbing to hypothermia. It gets very hot in Joshua in July, and perhaps he sought shade by wandering off trail. He was wearing hiking boots and the trail was well marked. Maybe he walked off trail to relieve himself, stumbled and fell, hitting his head against a rock. There are plenty of steep ridges in Joshua, and Paul may have tried to take a picture of the wildlife and fallen off the cliff edge. Was it a medical emergency? Did he meet someone on the trail that caused him to run for safety? Trail cameras are planned to be installed by Joshua Tree Park authorities, as well as one at the parking lot at